can you reach enlightenment while being a married person with married person problems? Question on the screen. Is there any point aiming for spiritual enlightenment while you struggle with interpersonal relationships such as your marriage? The commenter continues, what comes first, your inner work or the people around you, your soul's journey or your presence and intentional action in your marriage? My friend, it is not a choice between the two. You can bring them together and find an integration and a synthesis between the spiritual life and the life of the householder. And I'm going to give you some rapid-fire advice, calling in Spiritual Bypassing by Robert Augustus Masters right there on the screen, and also one of my favorite books from the channel, Embodied Spirituality in a Sacred World by Michael Washburn. Unless, disclaimer for this video, I'm going to try and give you hope, but the disclaimer for this video is, if you have married someone who's fundamentally anti-spiritual, they have real issues with a meditation practice, a prayer practice, or you reading transpersonal psychology books in your free time, it might not be the best situation for you. If you're in a bad relationship with someone who's uncaring towards your general trajectory towards enhanced consciousness, you aren't in a good situation. I won't sugarcoat it. You are going to find it very, very difficult to maintain a multi-decade, because that's what we're talking about, marriage. Marriage is multi-decade. If you're maintaining a multi-decade spiritual practice into your 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and hopefully, God willing, your 90s, you need to have a romantic partner, a life partner, a husband or a wife, who is encouraging of your daily prayer, your daily meditation, your daily scripture and studies. If they are not encouraging of this, you can do many things through conscious relationship work to try and bring them around to your side, but if fundamentally they will not encourage you to go deeper towards your relationship with your soul and your relationship with God, it is not a good situation for you, and the rest of this video is arguably irrelevant. For the sake of this conversation, though, I will assume that your partner is more or less open to you being a spiritual being and being a practical husband or wife with practical family duties in terms of making money, looking after children, managing a household together, navigating family and friends, and being a good romantic partner who's also got time for them as well. You don't need to choose between the two. Many people who are excited about enlightenment, again, I don't know if I'm overly projecting on this person in particular, but people who go for spiritual enlightenment and they're seeking the goal of spiritual enlightenment are usually not a decade plus into the journey of meditation and prayer. Many people who are excited by the idea of reaching high levels of consciousness are often either younger and they haven't got that much experience, or they've had a recent spiritual breakthrough where they're excited by the idea of the peak experience that they've mystically glimpsed, and they want to try and have more of that experience stretched out over their day-to-day reality. I'm not saying that you're naive or that you're immature in the sense of me trying to shame you. It just tends to be the case that if you're someone who's in a Western nation and you're aiming for spiritual enlightenment, you're usually using the language of basically Eastern thought transposed into a Western value system in a way that doesn't quite blend with Western systems such as the job, the mortgage, the family, the wife or the husband. It tends to be a bit of a disconnect. So my cold read for this questioner, if you are in a Western world and you're aiming for enlightenment, is it's maybe worth bringing down the ideal of enlightenment into something which is a bit more manageable, something which is maybe higher consciousness or living a more spiritual life on a day-by-day basis. Fantastic quote from Spiritual Bypassing brings this point home from the very conclusion of the book on page 176. Spiritual bypassing is worth outgrowing, Robert says, and spiritual bypassing in this context is bypassing the responsibilities of the household and the marriage into a state of seeking enlightenment in an ungrounded way. Quote continues, all we have to do is stop turning away from our pain and consciously enter it. This means an end to disembodied living, an end to spiritualized dissociation, an end to emotional illiteracy and relational immaturity. As we commit ourselves to a full-blooded awakening rooted in the cultivation of intimacy with all that we are, which includes your marriage, includes your wife or your husband, we find a willingness to bring whatever we have kept in the dark out in the open, and final sentence, from this newfound openness, we emerge with the gifts of our hard work, first-hand wisdom that benefits one and all. Final pages of the book. Crescendo moment from 176 pages. Fundamentally, the way to be an enlightened being in the Western world is to have the ability to walk between worlds, to spiritually bypass into an immature and ungrounded search for enlightenment, at the detriment of not fulfilling your duties in the household. That is something that we do not have the privilege of in our modern society. If you want to go and join an ashram with your partner, maybe that is the way that you can make it work. You can dedicate yourself to 3 or 4 hours per day of formal meditation, but guess what? You're also going to be doing chores. You're also going to be sweeping the floors. You're going to be looking after a farm. You're going to be working in some way or another. Most temples and ashrams and shrines around the world will have a healthy, sensible synthesis between formal meditation and prayer, formal studies in scripture, and also manual labor and classic doing the work that you need to do. This is the effort of, well, let's put it this way. No matter whether you're in a marriage, in a formal ashram or not, whether you have taken your partner into an ashram and you're both doing it together, or you have your own home in the modern world and you're creating an ashram-like environment, you're still going to be doing work in one form or another. I'm imagining in this scenario that you've got a husband or a wife who's truly on board with you becoming a spiritual, enlightened being of some form or another over multiple decades of consistent practice. You won't escape hard work. You won't escape the responsibility for meaningful conversation around difficult emotional issues, whether that's with your husband or your wife, your children, or your extended family and friends and colleagues and community members. There isn't really an option in 2025, or maybe in 10 years' time if you're still watching a video like this, there isn't an option to go and escape from the world. And being enlightened, being up on a mountainside, it's an illusion. But maybe I'm caricaturing things a bit too prematurely. Maybe what I'm trying to say is that you don't have to have an ungrounded, overly idealized vision of spiritual enlightenment to be significantly advanced in your consciousness. But to be significantly advanced in your consciousness, paradoxically, you also are very well served by embracing that you will have human-to-human responsibilities. Today's question has said, my soul's journey being more important than my intentions in my marriage. My friend, why would your soul's journey not include your marriage? Seriously, take your metaphysics into consideration. Your soul's journey on this earth. Your marriage is surely a significant part of your soul's journey. Whether that's a Christian or a Western influence or an Eastern influence from Buddhism or Hinduism, you are a soul with a human experience, as some might say. Your married partner is going to be very significant in that experience at the human level and the spiritual level. Again, the metaphysics can get complex. Even within a Christian tradition, the man and wife are a very sacred union. They are a sacred bond. They grow their spiritual strength together in harmony and unison, and that is a beautiful gift that they get to give each other, and also in their reverence towards God, and the various practices and commitments and sacraments that they will practice together. Marriage itself being a sacred sacrament. The Eastern traditions have their own versions of these sacraments. Marriage itself formally should be something which is divine and sanctified, which means to spiritualize your relationship. If today's questioner is unfortunately in a situation where their husband or wife isn't in agreement with the spiritual pathway, it becomes very difficult for this video to make sense. But practically, you do have the ability to maintain a search towards higher consciousness and build a deeper relationship with your partner, and also look after the household chores. You wouldn't escape this by going to an ashram in the woods. You would still have household chores. It might not be emails and bills and figuring out various schedules around the children, but you would have things that you still need to consider, even if it's cleaning the kitchen, or as I said, working out in the farm, or maybe dealing with some cleaning the clothes, doing laundry. You'd still have to do chores. I've stayed in ashrams before. You have to do chores. That's what you do, because it balances out the mental and spiritual effort with the physical effort. A place I want to turn us towards as we go into the second half of the video, as I mentioned at the beginning, not is this book, Spiritual Bypassing, picked up the wrong book, bypassing the book that we need, Embodied Spirituality in the Sacred World. Recommend you read this one, but we're going for this one right now. A quote towards the end of the book is worth considering, and this is about the ultimate reconciliation of having gone on an authentic, spiritual pilgrimage into the higher states of consciousness and then returning to what Michael Washburn would call the integrated world, which is a world where the spiritual and the physical, the practical and the metaphysical come into harmony and union. And Michael Washburn here, who is one of the best transpersonal psychologists who I know of, not personally, but he's still writing, he's still alive, he's still doing his work, he describes it almost perfectly. He says, quoting from the book on page 195, "The integrated world is a world of sacred value, because it is a world animated by transparent spirit. Fundamentally, in summary, if you reach a more enlightened state of consciousness, you come into contact with transparent spirit. Transparent spirit is then held within you as something of an animating force which colors your perception of the ordinary world, and that's the animating divine spark that becomes that feeling of being higher consciousness. That's what Washburn's referring to here. He continues, excuse me. Transparent spirit accentuates not only the beauty, but the preciousness of the world. If you've gone on a serious spiritual journey, you will then contact a spiritual force which beautifies the everyday world, including your marriage, which makes you hopefully a more loving and compassionate person. Washburn continues, the world as experienced by the integrated person cannot be taken for granted, for it elicits wonder, appreciation, and affirmation. Like the pre-Oedipal child in the Garden of Delight, the integrated person is in love with the world. I'll say that again. The integrated person is in love with the world. There no longer becomes a conflict between the marriage responsibilities, the worldly responsibilities, and the otherworldly metaphysics of spiritual enlightenment. You might not be aiming towards enlightenment and transcendence and ultimate escape from responsibility. If you are, unfortunately, that can often be a puer aeternus possession of one form or another. You're in a bit of a fantasy state of thinking you can get away from the way that the world is set up right now. It's fine, you're here for a reason, supposedly. If you have your metaphysical beliefs that your soul is here for a reason, then maybe you're here on planet Earth with current conditions for a very good reason. Maybe your soul's journey is to figure out how to balance the personal, the practical, the physical, the metaphysical, and try and do a synthesis of all of that. That's becoming an integrated person. But the world will be beautiful. It's almost as if the non-spiritual, to use a simple, crude set of phrasing, the non-spiritual, regular husband or wife who is immersed and absorbed in the day-to-day household responsibilities must be transcended and also included, to use Ken Wilber's language. You don't lose your footing in the material world. It becomes a greater world. And from that greater perspective, you look down on your smaller, more practical, less significant life with a new sense of reverence and beauty, because if you have genuinely, and this is people in the comment section maybe, you'll get this. If you leave a story down in the comment section, you can inspire other people who are maybe feeling like it's a conflict, an either or choice. If you're 5, 10, 15, or 20 years deep into a meditation and prayer practice on a consistent weekly basis, and you've read dozens of sacred scriptures of one form or another, depending upon your religious preference, you will notice that your day-to-day human interactions are sanctified and gorgeous. You will see the heart of God in the eyes of the stranger. You will see your beloved as a divine source, a divine inspiration of something that is beyond just their identity, beyond just their flesh. You'll see God in all things. You'll be in a constant communion, a meditative state that never seems to end if you truly take the spiritual path seriously. Again, this is 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years deep on the path. But you can definitely have a marriage. You can definitely have meaningful relationships. You can definitely have a business and have financial success while also working your way up the ladder of consciousness. It is not an either-or choice, unless, unfortunately, your closest relationships and physical environment is very anti-spiritual. Even as I say that, I think of Viktor Frankl in the concentration camps. One of his fantastic books, The Doctor and the Soul, he took into the camp with him and it was taken away. And he lost it, and on his 40th birthday, he was given a stub of a pencil because he lost this manuscript that he had lined into his jacket before it was taken away from him. And he rewrote the manuscript to The Doctor and the Soul, an incredible, inspiring psychological work in a camp with a stub of a pencil as his 40th birthday gift. I went to the Vienna Frankl Museum, and it was incredible to read that story. He was an incredible man, incredible thinker. He found meaning in suffering, meaning in imprisonment, literal slavery, and he still found a way to beautify his consciousness. If someone like Frankl can survive an ordeal of horror, many millions in comparable situations around the world, survivors of abuse, survivors of conflict, people who are enduring devastating situations can still find a way to work on their spiritual life, to find a way to be protected from the horrors and the tragedies of day-to-day existence, and still find that light space within. To still see God in the eyes of the stranger, and maybe at the greatest extreme, the eyes of the abuser. You can do it in your marriage with your bickering partner. You can do it in your marriage in the miscommunication between you. You can do it in your marriage when your children are unfortunately causing a bit of a fuss. It's not an either-or choice. You can have both, but you have to maintain a double intention. To be a spiritual being on the spiritual path, to honor your soul's journey, but to also be a proud, respect-worthy, and compassionate and strong husband or wife, father or mother. You can have both. I want both for you. And that's all I've got for this video. There's another one over there on the screen. Some more spiritual guidance, and the comment section is probably a good place to hang out as well. Fun video to film. Good luck. Be well.